Tonight, he's back.
I, Donald John Trump.
Trump 2.0.
A tide of change is sweeping the country.
We'll take a look at President Trump's first week in office, his big, bold moves, and how they are playing out.
Plus,
there was a bowing down to God in that ceremony, and that I felt like a presence that I had not seen previously.
how some people say the inauguration this time was just different, and their hopes for change in America.
And you know MAGA, but do you know MAHA?
Number one killer today is not smoking, it's not war, not infections, it's food.
Inside the promise to make America healthy again, and what the potential incoming health leaders want to do to shake up the food and medical industries. All this and more tonight on Faith Nation.
A week of change right here in Washington. Welcome to Faith Nation. I'm John Jessup.
And good evening from the nation's capital. I'm Jenna Browder. The 47th President of the United States, Donald Trump, is officially in office, and it has been a full week of executive orders and new policies taking effect.
We'll examine some of his actions, but first, as we start off, a look back at his inauguration, which he labeled Liberation Day, with President Trump kicking off his second presidency in a non-traditional way. Here's White House correspondent Kelly Wright.
In an intimate ceremony moved inside to the Capitol Rotunda to escape freezing temperatures, President Trump seized on his electoral mandate.
The golden age of America begins right now.
The president promises to spend each day back in the Oval Office putting America first, starting at the border. Among a stack of executive orders signed his first hours in office, he's sending troops to help secure the southern border, designating Mexican drug cartels as foreign terrorists, and moving to end automatic birthright citizenship.
A tide of change is sweeping the country. Sunlight is pouring over the entire world, and America has the chance to seize this opportunity like never before.
Wielding his executive pen and even throwing a few to supporters at a packed Washington arena, Mr. Trump also declared a national energy emergency, halted what he calls radical environmentalism, and began dismantling Biden-era policies.
It will henceforth be the official policy of the United States government that there are only two genders, male and female.
And following the release of the first Israeli hostages of the ceasefire, the president greeted families of Hamas victims attending his inauguration.
Well, it's safe to say Trump hit the ground running immediately following the pomp and circumstance.
Yeah, let's bring in two guys who have been very busy this week. CBN News White House correspondent Kelly Wright is here, and also CBN News Chief Political Analyst David Brody. Kelly, let's start where you left off in your report. With the war in the Middle East, the president has said he's not confident the ceasefire will hold.
Yeah, Jenna and John, good to talk to you about this important week that we've seen so far, the first week of the 47th President of the United States, Donald Trump, who says America is going to witness a new golden age, a new golden era for America. And that notwithstanding, he's looking at that Israel-Hamas ceasefire deal, one that he takes credit for, along with the previous administration of President Joe Biden. But the president making it abundantly clear that he does not believe that deal would have gone through without the efforts of his team. Speaking of this deal, he is not very confident in Hamas. He talks about the fact that he stated this publicly from the Oval Office as he was signing executive orders dealing with a number of issues in America domestically as well as foreign. But he went on to say that he's not confident in Hamas because they are a terrorist regime. He believes that at some point along the way of this ceasefire deal that they will disrupt it. He also talked about the fact that Gaza has been leveled and flattened and needs to be rebuilt, but he does not believe that Hamas should be in leadership in order to oversee that rebuilding. He is concerned about the hostages. He wants all of the hostages to be returned, including those American hostages. And he says to that end, he believes that this is something that should have never happened. October 7th should have never gone down. He believes that with him in leadership now, that he can bring peace to the Middle East through the Abraham Accords.
David, one big topic, as expected this week, has been President Trump's actions on the border. Can we talk about some of the moves that he's made and how those are playing out so far? You know, in his first 24 hours, close to 200 executive actions, 80 or so executive orders, and the rest being personnel matters. David, talk to us about what we're seeing so far.
Well, what we're seeing is Vin Diesel in the form of Donald Trump. I mean, this has been fast and furious, and it's really been remarkable. So there's a lot to unpack, and we can go through, well, I say we could go through all the executive orders on immigration, but we'd run out of time, and I have dinner plans. But ultimately, look, 1,500 troops or so to the southern border, the Remain in Mexico policy, and there's others, obviously, so many more. But look, I think ultimately what this is going to be about is you can do only so much through executive orders, as we know. It's all going to be about Congress, specifically about funding. That is the key here. That's why we hear this one big, beautiful bill, or will it be two small, beautiful bills? Whatever it is, the funding runs out in March as it relates to the continuing resolution. If you want to do mass deportations, if you want to do everything that Donald Trump wants to do, you have to, show me the money, as Jerry Maguire said. You have to pay for it. And of course, that means that Congress is going to have to ante up. So that's why budget reconciliation, this one big beautiful bill, so to speak, is crucial to really get it done. Right now, you're just mobilizing a lot of what he can do from an executive branch standpoint, which is a big deal, but it's not fully lasting, if you will. Congress has got to get involved.
So looking ahead, we know several of President Trump's cabinet picks are still facing confirmation hearings and votes. Who do you think will be next to be confirmed? And is there anyone who you think is at risk of not making it through this process? David, to you, and then to Kelly.
Well, I think the only one that's in danger right now would probably be Tulsi Gabbard, possibly RFK, but I think RFK will get through. Pete Hegseth should get through because of Joni Ernst's support there. My guess is that J.D. Vance, who will be president of the Senate, will have to do the tiebreaker vote there. Hegseth could get confirmed as early as, well, later this week, possibly this weekend. So if you're looking at Hegseth, he's probably going to get confirmed, Kristi Noem, all of them. Tulsi Gabbard, that's a hard one, because right now you're going to have Susan Collins. That's going to be a no. You know that's going to be the case. She hasn't come out officially. None of these have come out officially. But you go down the list, he could be at 49 Republicans, and that's not good. That won't work.
Kelly, who are you keeping an eye on right now?
Well, I think David has already said it abundantly clear that Tulsi Gabbard is the one who looks like she will have some issues, and that's because of things that she has done in the past. Bashar al-Assad, who is now the deposed dictator of Syria. We've seen the fallout from her dealings with him. And so because of things that she's done in her past, that will come to perhaps stymie her passage of or confirmation from an advice and consent Senate.
All right, gentlemen, thank you. Stay with us. We are going to put a pin in it for right now, but stay with us. Our look ahead at the new Trump era continues. We will discuss President Trump's relationship with the media and potential changes in store there. Welcome back as we continue this look back on the transition of power in the nation's capital this week. It's a stark contrast to the first time Donald Trump took office in 2017.
That's right. CBN's Chuck Holton was here in D.C. and explored what made things so different this past Monday and the role of faith for some of the attendees.
On January 20th, 2017, during President Donald Trump's first inauguration, chaos erupted in Washington. Violent protests, including vandalism and clashes with police, led to more than 200 arrests. Although many faced felony charges, most cases were later dismissed or acquitted. The scenes of destruction and division lingered in the minds of many, but this year's event told a very different story, one of calm and order.
8 years ago today, on Inauguration Day 2017, this park behind me was completely full of protesters who ultimately became rioters. And many of them were carrying signs saying that America should be a communist state. Now, what's really ironic about that is that right here across the street, this building is the Museum for the Victims of Communism. And apparently they didn't catch that irony, but today, because it's 20 degrees out here, this park is empty.
While the freezing temperatures may have discouraged large protests, many attendees pointed to something much deeper, a renewed focus on faith and hope for the future.
There was a bowing down to God in that ceremony and that I felt like a presence that I had not seen previously, and that's from everyone in every aspect of that, which was exciting.
Just a few months ago in a beautiful Pennsylvania field, an assassin's bullet ripped through my ear. But I felt then, and believe even more so now, that my life was saved for a reason. I was saved by God to make America great again.
It wasn't just the absence of protests that stood out. It was a sense that this inauguration reflected something greater.
Trump is not Christ, but I think that that's the most amazing part of that ceremony, is that Trump is somebody that Christ is utilizing and partnering with in this moment.
You know, the economy has been pretty bad, and one of the biggest factors for me was just the global chaos that's been happening in the past 4 years, you know, Afghanistan and then Ukraine and then all the Middle Eastern stuff, and we're just inching closer and closer to World War III. And, you know, I'm not trying to die in World War III. I don't want to get drafted, so that was like the big thing.
The overwhelming security presence also played a key role in keeping the peace. With thousands of police, guardsmen, and miles of fencing, any potential disruption was quickly deterred.
With hundreds of trucks like these, 30 miles of fencing, and enough police and National Guardsmen to fill a small city, the security surrounding today's events for the inauguration was unprecedented. And whether it was what these people did or the truly cold weather that kept the protesters at bay, I think everybody is breathing a sigh of relief tonight for a peaceful transfer of power.
It's hard to say if the quiet we saw in Washington will continue throughout President Trump's second term, but this inauguration will certainly be remembered for being uncharacteristically calm and very, very cold. For CBN News, I'm Chuck Holton.
Yeah, definitely a different vibe in D.C. for the inauguration this time.
And he wasn't lying about it being cold.
No, it's still cold.
Well, let's bring back our panel as we preview, or actually review, President Trump's first week in office and what's still ahead. CBN White House correspondent Kelly Wright is here, and also CBN News chief political analyst David Brody.
And let's stay on that vibes discussion, Trump 2.0. What do you think will be different about him or how he operates from what we've seen in the past, David?
Much more focused. They've had 4 years to figure it out, what they want to do on day one, and my goodness, that has succeeded. Look, gone are the days from a media perspective regarding the presidency of a president speaking once a week, twice a week. Forget all that. All bets are off with Donald Trump. I mean, he's literally, he held 60 minutes with the press the other day at the Resolute desk there in the Oval Office, and what did he do? Oh, look at that. He opened it up. He found a letter from Joe Biden. What do you know? Next to the rubber bands. I mean, the stuff that he's doing is really the most transparent we've ever seen from a president. He did it in 2017. It'll be more like that as well. One last point on the media. Take note of the fact that Caroline Leavitt has not done a press conference yet, and we haven't really seen J.D. Vance at all. Why? Well, we know it's the Trump show, but I think specifically in this first week, maybe into the second week, it's going to be all Trump all the time from a communication strategy. That's what this White House really wants, and they'll use Caroline Leavitt in certain spots when they need to get a certain message across, but I think that's something to take note of.
Kelly, do you want to pick it up there? What are you anticipating?
Yeah, you know, I was at the White House reporting on the events on Inauguration Day, and of course throughout the week I've been out there standing in the cold to report on what the 47th President of the United States is doing. And he's made some sweeping changes, and he's moved at a rapid pace. And the media is trying to keep up with him. It's a lot. I was talking to a colleague, a former colleague of mine, who said, man, I'm just trying to keep up with him, keep up with this pace. And speaking of the White House Press Secretary, Caroline Leavitt, I saw her where we were getting ready to do a live shot for Faith Nation, and she was just a couple of feet away from me. I took time out to talk to her about the sweeping changes that this president has made concerning DEI, as well as what's happening along the border, declaring a national state of emergency on the southern border. And to David's point, she was actually talking to a former colleague of mine, Martha McCollum, on Fox News, about that program and about what the president was doing and trying to bring some control along the border. And so to David's point, she's being rolled out, if you will, to speak strategically on what the president intends to do on certain executive orders. But the bottom line is the president is handling it himself. He's been meeting in the Oval Office with a pool of reporters consistently and being very transparent, very open. In 4 to 5 days, he's done more in that regard than we ever saw press conferences from the former president of the United States.
David, one of the things that we noticed the last time around with President Trump was the level of access that evangelical Christians had to the Oval Office. He really seemed to be in tune with that community. What are you expecting this time around?
It's there, but it's definitely not as prevalent this time around as compared to last time. Remember, in 2017 when he came in, there was a lot of skepticism. One of the reasons he picked Mike Pence, to kind of get the evangelicals. Of course, he would say the evangelicals love him, but he needed Mike Pence to help some of those evangelicals that were holding their nose, if you will, at the time. This time around, it's become more populist in nature. We saw that during the campaign, and we're seeing that now start to transpire at the White House. Doesn't mean that evangelicals aren't important. They are to him. They're part of the base. It's a subset of that populist base, if you think about it, within the MAGA movement. So they're there, they're around, but it's just not kind of as much in your face. I will say this from a priority standpoint. Evangelicals want to see movement on gender ideology this time around. Obviously, Donald Trump did that with an executive order, and there'll be more to come. And then, of course, religious freedom will be important, and Israel is crucial right at the top, along with working on that anti-Semitism angle as well.
Kelly, different topic, but what do you expect from J.D. Vance as vice president? Do you think he'll be put in charge of a particular policy area? And what do you think Trump sees as his particular wheelhouse?
I think when it comes to the vice president, he will be a can-do vice president. He has already stated that he is there to support what President Donald Trump wants to do with his agenda on moving America forward and getting America to actually start dealing with the golden age. There's also been some differences of opinion between the two of them, but the vice president will stand at the president's side.
All right, gentlemen, thank you both for your perspective and your insight. Hope you both get some well-deserved rest this weekend so you can catch your breath. And now that we are back operating at the speed of Donald Trump. Thanks. Well, up next, the plan to make America healthy again. It's a campaign promise President Trump and others hope to implement in office. But what does it really mean? We explain next. Well, Robert F. Kennedy Jr.'s confirmation hearing is set for next week.
As Trump's point man for the Make America Healthy Again movement, he and others have big plans to shake up the health status quo in Washington.
Number one killer today is not smoking, it's not war, not infections, it's food.
Make America Healthy Again, a movement that picked up steam during the 2024 election and has rapidly grown in popularity since.
In the last 50 or so years, there's been about 10,000 chemicals added to the American food supply, where countries in Europe only have 400 approved for use.
So what is it, and what could it look like in practice?
I'm not going to take away anybody's vaccines. I've never been anti-vax.
RFK Jr. wants to lead America's war on chronic disease. And if he becomes Secretary of Health and Human Services, will focus on reforming the federal government's health agencies.
93% of American adults have metabolic dysfunction. This is caused by our toxic food system and our modern lifestyle, which has changed rapidly over the past 50 to 75 years.
Dr. Casey Means, a Stanford-educated surgeon, and her brother Callie are advisors to RFK Jr. Her book, Good Energy, is also considered to be the health playbook for the incoming Trump administration.
What I saw in the healthcare system is that we're spending more money every single year on treating diseases, but patients in America aren't really getting better. Our rates of chronic illnesses are going up every single year. The more money we spend on healthcare, the sicker we're getting.
She tells CBN News up to 80% of diseases can be avoided by addressing their root causes. Means says RFK Jr. has a three-pronged agenda. 1. Get conflicts of interest out of health agencies. 2. Produce uncompromised, evidence-based research to establish guidelines for health standards. And 3, reverse the trend of the chronic disease epidemic.
I think this movement is such a long time in coming. It's so overdue for us to have a national conversation about why we are the sickest, fattest, saddest, most over-medicated population in human history.
Katie Talento, an epidemiologist by training, served as a health advisor to the first Trump administration. She says RFK Jr. and his team will likely start with structural reforms.
So, for instance, the types of advisory committees that are made up of outside experts, both at the CDC and at the FDA, are riddled with big pharma corruption. There's almost nobody who sits on those outside experts. And these are very powerful panels. There's almost no expert that sits on those panels that is independent of pharma money.
But legislation can't just be slashed, and she says certain laws and statutes could be a barrier. She adds the interpretation of those laws, though, is in the purview of executive branch officials, and how much they can do depends on how they navigate the regulatory tools available to them.
So, for instance, we have all these food additives, red dye number whatever and yellow dye number, and like too many syllables and you can pronounce that are in all our food. Those additives, no one ever approved them as safe. They were never really going through clinical trials and showing that they're demonstrating through data that they're safe. They were given a designation by the FDA of generally recognized as safe, GRAS. And it basically means some scientist somewhere, probably on the food industry payroll, said that this is probably fine. Like, that's basically what happened. And so that kind of process that GRAS process can be dramatically reformed, and that designation can be removed forthwith, quickly, I think, from many, many of the poisonous and toxic or even questionable, we don't know, additives that are permitted in our food supply.
Talento sees it as a spiritual battle.
So how much you and I are praying and fasting for these initiatives will help determine how possible it is.
Really good and important reporting, Jenna.
Oh, thank you. It's an issue that a lot of people care about, and one that the Trump team was really smart to seize on.
Yeah, would agree.
All right, coming up, a behind-the-scenes inauguration story you may not have heard about yet. How the gospel was spread. Next. Finally tonight, a part of the inaugural festivities in D.C. you may not have heard about.
That's right. We often talk about the Bibles incoming presidents used for the ceremony. President Trump used the same two that he did back in 2017. One Christian effort, though, put together 50,000 Bible booklets to pass around for the inauguration around D.C. The booklets commemorated President Donald Trump's 2025 inauguration and contained scripture from the books of John and Romans. Faith and Liberty, along with Seedline International and Hope to the Hill, plan to pass the booklets out to Trump faithful in town for the inauguration. The ministries have done this in the past for other presidential inaugurations, too. 50,000, that's quite a bit.
That's incredible. To be outside, I'm assuming, handing them out, that's commendable.
Yeah, and very timely.
All right,
thanks for watching.
Have a great night.